A Radiant warrior has entered the lands between and punishes its enemies with blinding and flashy blade strikes and devastating holy energy beams. Since Euporia is now broken after the recent patch, I will also break down the changes made for this weapon to help you understand its unique mechanic. If you are looking for a broken, flashy, and even eye candy Euporia build, this Radiant Duelist build is for you. I'm the Samurai and I'll be guiding you on how to maximize this build, state the possible challenges that this build has, and help you overcome them. So ultimately, this guide will help you decide if you want to go for this build. The Radiant Duelist is equipped with a legendary weapon that can manipulate ethereal holy powers and overwhelms its enemies with heavy-hitting quick blade strikes and holy beams. An individual who mastered holy incantations to take out its targets from a distance. This Fate-focused build has an insane normal attack damage multiplier that can burst down bosses in the game, making it one of the strongest builds currently. Moving on to the build stats, I allocated 50 points of vigor to give the user a fair survivability in combat. And as always, you are welcome to adjust this to 60 points if you think you really need more health while adjusting to the build's gameplay. The Euporia Vortex costs 28 focus points, however, it's not accessible right away due to the weapon's mechanic, so as little as 24 points allocated to mine will work. For endurance, I allocated 25 points and I find it just right for this playstyle. Fate, strength, and dexterity are going to be our main offensive stats in this build, allocating 80 points to Fate, 36 to strength, and 31 to dexterity. I allocated 23 points to intelligence while no points were added to arcane. If you are playing at level 150, I got you covered and I am showing them on the screen right now. Time for the build's equipment, and of course, Euporia is going to be our main weapon for this build. This twin blade requires 16 strength, 16 dexterity, and 24 fate for a user to wield the weapon properly, while having D scaling for strength and dexterity and B to fate. Okay, so this weapon receives a lot of overhaul after the recent patch. Euporia is one of the most disappointing weapons in the past, and it is now as broken as ever. I will try my best to explain how Euporia's unique mechanics work in the simplest form possible. Essentially, this weapon will glow after landing a certain amount of normal attack hits. The special glow that it accumulates is called the luster effect, and the luster effect has 2 tiers, and each tier will add additional holy damage, making its damage even more ideal. It will take a user to land 3 light attacks to gain a tier, or by landing 1 charge heavy attack. You'll know if you reach the first and second tiers depending how bright the luster effect is. You only have 2 tiers or stages of the luster effect, so you cannot miss this. I am showing now a visual representation on the screen so you will have a clear picture of how it look like. For demonstration purposes, I will show you one example on the screen right now, and after successfully landing 3 consecutive light attacks, you will notice that it will glow and it's telling you that it's already on tier 1. Now I will land 3 light attacks again and notice that it will now reach tier 2, which is the highest. For charge attacks, you only need to land 1 charge attack to reach tier 1 and another one to reach tier 2. Keep in mind that the luster effects decays over time if you are not landing attacks as you go along to a certain fight. So if you don't land attacks, you will lose the luster effect by tier. However, according to my testing, you can accumulate and extend its decaying timer for more than 3 minutes and maybe more. The cap is not that important since you want to unload the skill if you have the chance. So to simplify things, your goal is to reach tier 2 luster effect by hitting enemies and to have that insane normal attack multipliers, and when you have the chance, unloading your skill would be the best course of action. Now that you have understood how the luster effect works, upon reaching tier 1, you can unload Euporia's Vortex, which is the weapon's unique skill, by pressing L2. What it does is the weapon itself spin at high speed in front of the user, performing like a vortex, hence the name. And afterwards, fire a very strong holy laser beams, which behave like a Comet Azure sorcery if you are familiar with this one. Of course, the higher the tier and the longer the duration is. Landing tier 2 Euporia Vortex hits a lot of damage, like super a lot, so what I usually do is if I have the chance, I use it at point blank range to even deal more damage, or it can be a range attack to hit bosses, especially if they are in the middle of an AoE attack animation. Alright, so that's a lot of explanation and I hope that I explained it well. So moving on to the build secondary weapon, and I am using the Erdtree seal to be able to cast our key buffs and offensive incantations later on. Following up with suggested spells, and the first one on the list is of course our Flame Grant Me Strength incantation for the additional 20% physical attack boost and stamina recovery buff. The second buff on the list is of course our staple Golden Vow, and this buff increases overall damage by 15% and adds 10% damage negation, which is very helpful for this build. Since we do have an insane amount of fate stats, slotting in Blessing of the Erdtree to gain significant HP regen, since we will be equipping the Bloodsucking Crack tier in this setup. This build lacks AoE attack, so I decided to slot in 3 Rings of Light, and I usually use this when dealing with multiple targets to easily take them out. Its cone-like AoE range is ideal for this build. A multi-layered Ring of Light is also going to be used in this build. This is going to be your main range attack just in case that Euporia Vortex is not around when fighting bosses, and its continuous damage is so satisfying while also dealing stance damage in the process. Keep in mind that this is a chargeable spell if you want to deal more damage. As always, if you find this guide useful so far, subscribing to the channel and liking the video sure helps me a lot, and thank you for your support. Moving on to my suggested talismans, and the first one on the list is of course our staple Shard of Alexander for the 15% skill damage increase. We will be two-handing Euporia like 24/7, so slotting in two-handed sword talisman is suggested for this build. For the third and final slot, we are dealing with quick multiple hitting attacks as the main damage dealing source in this build, so slotting in Millicent Prosthesis and Rotting Wing Sword Insignia is the best slot for this build. Moving on to my Flash of Wonders physique combination, slotting in Thorny Crack tier is a no-brainer for this build. And as I have mentioned, I paired it with Bloodsucking Crack tier for more attack boost, and as mentioned, the Blessing of the Erdtree can drastically slows down the HP loss per second. For the Great Runes, on the other hand, I suggest slotting in, as always, Godric's Great Rune for the additional 5 stats across the board. Moving on to the Radiant Duelist armor set, I am going for this majestic knight looking theme, so I equipped the Raging Wolf's helm for the headpiece, Lettuce armor for the armor, and not to mention this is one of my favorites lately, in Blight's pieces for gauntlets and greaves. This mix set turns out so well, and I will be using this personally in the long run. It's time for the build's pros and cons, and starting with pros first. The first one on the list is of course the insane damage output of this build. Euporia's Vortex can wipe almost anyone from the face of the earth, however your normal attack combos are going to be your bread and butter since you can just pull your unique skill anytime. As mentioned, your attacks will be hitting hard and bosses will surely die fast. The next thing is pretty subjective, as you can find its gameplay rather refreshing or frustrating. More on the frustrating part later on, but it can provide a refreshing experience for some, as the weapon is pretty unique compared to the other weapons out there. Unloading Euporia skills can be rewarding for many cases, especially if you manage to make the boss eat the whole tier 2 animation. Also, I don't know about you, but Euporia is one of the most beautiful weapon in the game, and just seeing it when fully charged is so satisfying. While this setup is highly versatile and you can adapt in any situation. Whether you are dealing with fast moving targets or normal ones, you can perform optimally in most cases. Moving on to the cons, and of course the first glaring issue of this weapon is that the Euporia Vortex has a long skill animation. Keep in mind that when you get hit and staggered, it will cancel the skill since this skill doesn't have hyper armor. Although you can cancel it, however, it will lock you for about 2 seconds mostly before you can roll away. Remember that we will talk about the frustrating part of the Euporia's unique gameplay. Imagine you tried so hard and waited for tier 2 luster to take effect, and you are excited to blow away enemies with the weapon's unique skill, but as soon as you cast the skill, you get hit and the skill was cancelled. Yep, that is really frustrating since you will be charging it again to at least tier 1 to be able to use its skill. The fact that it takes time for a user to cast its skill is one of the reasons why it is not for everyone. And of course, the last con would be its holy damage. However, I don't see this as much of a con, as this weapon can pretty much wreck every boss in the game, especially the final boss who is resistant to holy. I have run through the base game in the DLC to check its effectiveness, and it is true that you will be seeing slower pace when dealing with holy resistant bosses, but it's not that bad. Even the final boss of the DLC is doable when using this weapon. But we can change the fact that this build is truly an S tier build due to its insane damage output even if you only rely on your normal attacks. If you are looking for something fresh in terms of gameplay, you will want to check out this weapon. Blowing enemies with eye candy laser was a very satisfying experience in my case. I felt like a Jedi, to be honest. However, if you like straightforward gameplay, there is a chance that you will hate this build. But also there is a chance that while also adjusting to it, you will have fun in the process. But if you are looking for something different, you might want to try out the Iron Berserker who smashes enemies with its greatsword, or be the best Moonveil user out there. These build videos are for you. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video, and I will catch you on the next one.